achieved.
So I would have to assume that the majority of the sporting world, at least to some degree, will be tuning in on Saturday night and in the subsequent days for the upcoming UFC events, the trio we're going to have in the 8 days, to see how this plays out. The sporting world is slowly turning the gears of motion, and they're starting to get back into the swing of things. With NASCAR, we're starting to hear rumblings of the NBA and the NHL are considering potential return to play plans. With the UFC full swing, full competition, back at it on Saturday. And obviously no fans. Obviously there'll be some things behind the scenes that we might not be aware of and we might not notice, but certainly the fighters will and all those in attendance will. Nonetheless, you'd have to think these individuals are going to watch this to see, how does this go off? What are the repercussions? Is it successful? Does it work? Clearly, operations of a UFC event and an NHL hockey game or an NBA game are certainly different. But at the same time, we have to be aware that this sets a precedence. If it doesn't go well, does this possibly kibosh any returns? If we find out that in the coming days and weeks that a couple fighters test positive for COVID-19, does that possibly have implications that reverberate throughout the sporting community saying, no, we're too quick, we're too early returning to this? Or if no one does and the event goes well, does it signal that the proper testing procedures and everything being done above board and effectively and thoroughly, does that mean we can have a forthcoming return to sport? It'll be very interesting nonetheless. It's also worth noting that I'm talking about this before the event actually takes place. And I want to commend the fighters. Only one fighter, Jeremy Stevens, missed weight. He missed weight by 5.5 pounds, 4.5 pounds, I guess, with the extra pound limitation or exception. First time in a long time he's missed weight. I think it was Dennis Bermudez. That matchup was the last time he missed weight, which is several fights ago. But commending all the fighters for making weight under the circumstances. Good for them. It couldn't have been easy, and certainly very professional. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and in this episode of the show, we are taking a look at the upcoming UFC on ESPN 9 fight card, which will transpire on Wednesday, May 13th. So this event going down on a Wednesday night, the second of 3 events in 8 days, Jacksonville, Florida, same facility, should be very awesome. I'll be giving you my predictions for all 5 main card fights. As of right now, there are 6 potential preliminary fights will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so I encourage you to check them out there. The bet packs will be available for sale as well. Now, I'm coming off of a series of shows. I've had 3 consecutive shows where my hardcore betting clusters have produced profit, roughly combined 50 units profit. And again, those for guys who want to come out and show you, grind. They're not going to go big and flashy and go all in on these big bets, but they're going to make some cash, show you that they're willing to take the long road and win. My casual betting cluster, again, as I've talked about, is more for those casual fans who want to spend $50, $100, maybe $200, but nothing massive, and just have some Hail Mary bets. Have a lot of fun. You're having some beers, some chicken wings, and you put $50 on a 6-leg or a 5-leg parlay. Not 6-leg, but 4 or 5-leg parlay. Usually nothing more than 4. Usually it's in that 3 to 4 leg area, and you're looking to win big. And as you'll notice, we usually either win big or we lose big. It's one of the two. But it's that thing, the long stretch, if you go back, you will see that we're ahead. We're still ahead, and that's the fun. It's a fun approach to betting. So I offer both options. I also give fantasy breakdowns, everything else in between there. So certainly $15, you can check it out, or you can subscribe and save yourself some money. For those who have subscribed or plan to subscribe for the current situation, because usually we go in 2-month intervals, but because that kind of got thrown off with the change in schedule, I believe going into UFC 249, there were 5 events left. So we'll just get that number down, and we'll just kind of keep going forward, and we'll chunk it up based on in some form, maybe 6 events at a time. We'll see how it goes. But as soon as the number expires, so 5 starting with UFC 249, we'll start the subscription package over again. So again, thank you very much as always for tuning in. I'm really excited to be back. I think a lot of you guys are excited as well to be enjoying fights. There is, you can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Certainly send me a shout out there if you have any questions, comments. I'm available for email as well. You can find that on my website, and you can follow me on Facebook. On that note, we've got 5 pretty awesome main card fights. Let's get to that first main card prediction. Fight number 1 on the main card transpires in the UFC's middleweight division as the 9-2 Karl Baby K Roberson takes on the 14-4-1 Italian Dream Marvin Vettori. The current betting lines see Roberson coming as a slight underdog at plus 130, Vettori returning at a minus 160. Now, there's definitely some room in the middleweight division right now for the winner of this matchup to get that step up. I don't think as of right now. Neither one of them are ranked in the middleweight division, but the winner of this certainly could acquire an opportunity to fight a ranked opponent. Could even get a ranking next to their name with a win, with a solid performance here, depending on how things play out. Now, Vettori has won back-to-back fights versus Andrew Sanchez and Cesar Ferreira. He lost a split decision the fight before that to the reigning champion. And overall, he's 2-4-1 in the UFC. He's had a pretty good run. He's been very notable, very successful in his tenure in the octagon. For Roberson, he's won back-to-back fights against some pretty talented prospects in Wellington Turman and, Kopilov, his first name escaping me. He lost a light heavyweight bout to Glover Teixeira, in which he had a lot of success early on, but got finished before the first round was done. And he has gone 4-2 in the promotion as well. So these guys have a very good bit of matchmaking, and I really like this little pairing here. Physically, Roberson 1 inch taller. They have the same reach. Vettori is the younger man by 3 years. Now, Karl Roberson comes into the UFC as a very capable kickboxer, does it with a upset light heavyweight on the Contender Series, knocking out Ryan Spann. But he started his UFC career, and it's on a very different note. It's been dictated by a very different skill. So far, he just started his UFC career. He's gone 2-2 through his first 4 fights. That's what we're identifying right now. We had 2 fights that he won based on grappling, a submission victory and a takedown heavy victory. His other 2 losses were the result of grappling. 2 submission losses in both those fights. More recently, he did earn that split decision nod over Turman, where he outlanded him 50-25, but he gave up 4 takedowns, so it showed some of his deficiencies. For Kopilov, he scored a submission win, but it was set up heavily by a barrage of leg kicks, where he really compromised his opponent's ability to move around, compromised his base, and that led to the eventual finish. So it's almost like with Roberson, he's either beating guys in the strength of his grappling, or he's losing guys based on the deficiencies in his grappling. You see what I'm saying? Despite the fact that he is primarily known as a kickboxer coming into this. So the big question is, can he find any success with his takedowns in this fight? Vettori's takedown defense has been very good and has improved from one fight to the next. He lost an early fight to Antonio Carlos Jr. On the basis of takedowns. Jr. landed 4 takedowns on 13 attempts and really held the top control for the majority of that matchup. Since that fight, opponents have gone 0-10 on takedowns, including Andrew Sanchez, a noted wrestler, 0-2, and the aforementioned Ferreira, 0-5 on takedowns. So that's a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. It's a pretty good wrestling practitioner. Both of them struggling to take Vettori down. He outclassed them as a result. And now you take that one step further. Vettori actually has some solid submission chops. He actually has more submission wins than he does anything else. He has wins over Alberto Uda and Igor Araujo pre-UFC, both jiu-jitsu black belts. 8 of his 14 wins are by submission. So in his own right, he's very capable on the mat, and he actually could find some success there if he opts to go in that direction. If Vettori stands on the feet, he's a functional striker. He stays very active. He lacks those big KO numbers, which suggests he doesn't have big knockout power, but he still is impactful with his offense. He busts his opponents up. He does damage. He's one of these guys who doesn't really fit any of those, death by accumulation, where he's going to put a ton of volume on you and eventually stop you, but he's not going to one punch knock you out. He's in the middle. He's going to do damage. He's going to do enough volume. He's going to stay active. He's just going to stay in your face. And his volume has steadily improved. In his early run of his UFC career, he was 50-60 significant strikes. Over his last 2 fights, 78 and 85. So he's trending in the right direction for a guy who's finding that balance between offensive output, defensive awareness, and just overall cardio maintenance. Not going to gas himself out and leave himself vulnerable to a late finish or blowing a close fight. Now, Roberson's never come close to those totals. His significant strikes usually range between 35 and 50 significant strikes. So that tells you that if he can't land takedowns, despite his striking background, he might have some issues matching the output of his opponent. Roberson, I give the edge in technical skill, and I would give him a slight edge in power. For Vettori, his striking edges land in volume, consistency, and just his general durability, his ability to absorb damage and keep embracing it. It's almost like he thrives off of that willingness to take shots and give shots. I also give Vettori the edge in offensive and defensive grappling and wrestling. Even if he doesn't have the edge, he has shown himself very good at defending, and that takes away a key aspect of Roberson's offensive ability and takes away a key path to victory that he has utilized on multiple occasions. Roberson, I think, if he can't get this fight to the ground, if that turns out to be a stalemate, he needs to hurt him early and often. Stop Vettori, which is not easy with his hands, or bust him up so much that it really takes away his ability to push that pace. I don't think Roberson's going to do enough. He'll have his moments, and the exchanges will be good. I think what we're going to see is Vettori just land more strikes, kind of bully Roberson around a little bit into the cage, keep engaging. I think Marvin pulls away in rounds 2 and 3. Going to be a good fight, very entertaining fight to start the card. My prediction is Marvin Vettori to defeat Karl Roberson by decision. Up next, we're in the UFC's bantamweight division as former flyweight title challenger 13-4-0 Ray Borg takes on the 15-3 Ricky Simón. Currently coming into this fight, Simón is the favorite at -175. The comeback on the underdog Borg at +150. And again, I'm taking these odds from Bet365. Now, Borg is moving back to bantamweight. He missed weight again at 125 pounds. He has won back-to-back fights overall. He's had those issues with weight. He went 1-1 with a brief stint at bantamweight, including a fight where he missed weight at 135 pounds, so anything's possible coming into this fight. For Ricky Simón, he started his UFC run 3-0. Looked very good. It was the capstone of an 8-fight winning streak, but he has since lost back-to-back fights, a very shocking result against Uriah Faber, and then a more expected, but at least more acceptable, tangible defeat against Rob Font. Simón is the taller man at 2 inches. He'll have a sizable 6-inch reach advantage, and he is 1 year older than Borg. Now, Borg's style is pretty straightforward. I'm not saying it's easy to defend, but it's known at this point. Takedowns, top control. He doesn't throw a lot of volume with his striking. He's very good with transitions and scrambles. He's got an excellent back take game. And he'll either set up a submission or grind you into the ground for a decision defeat. When he fought Bontarrain, he landed 10 takedowns en route to a victory there. 6 against Bruno Silva the fight before that. He beat Smolka with 4 takedowns, and he had some very big takedown totals early in his UFC career. But he ultimately needs to take takedowns and top control. That's the key there. It's not just takedowns, it's takedowns and top control of the grounded fights. Some guys can land takedowns, not achieve a lot of top control, but they augment it with nice volume on the feet. That's not Borg's style. He needs to cash in when he puts you on the mat. Versus Kenny, when he fought him at bantamweight, I picked Kenny to pull off that upset. There was a post-title fight letdown scenario. Kenny gave up 7 takedowns, but Borg only landed 17 significant strikes and lost a very close decision. When he fought DJ, just 3 takedowns, but only 13 significant strikes, put up a pretty good fight, lost the fight anyway. Against Justin Scoggins, which was his first real misstep. I know he lost Ortiz earlier, but Scoggins, limited him to 1 takedown, only 20 significant strikes. Borg just could not find much success. When you look back at Borg's, whole resume of work, he only has 1 win when he has limited takedown success. In fact, he landed 0 takedowns against Jose Formiga in a fight where he was able to defeat him primarily in the feet. But the reason he did that is he was facing another takedown heavy oriented fighter. Formiga is an absolute beast on the mat. Borg recognized that, took that away from him, forced him to fight on the feet, edged him out with volume, just 36 significant strikes to 30, won a decision as a result, which led to his title fight. Now, for Simón, he has had a pretty similar stat line. He had 7 takedowns against Montel Jackson early on and won that fight. He had 4 against Hani Yahya on a pretty impressive performance and won that fight. And he had 6 in a losing effort against Rob Font last time out. The problem in that matchup is similar to what Borg has issues with. He wasn't able to maintain any prolonged top control. Font got back up, landed more strikes in the feet, won the fight as a result. If you go back to Simon's UFC debut against Merab Dvalishvili, he took him down. Dvalishvili took him down multiple times, and while Simón had a good wrestling, able to get back up, Dvalishvili was ahead on the scorecards prior to that very unusual last-second submission victory that swung the fight in Ricky's favor. If we look at the feet, Simón has a little more pop in his strikes. He's a little more active than Borg overall, but if he can't stay vertical, that won't matter. And that's something we have to decide. Can Borg take Simón down and keep him with regularity? Borg, as I said, he's a very good scrambler, but again, he struggled with the wrestling and size of Kenny. He took the wrestler down quite frequently, and he tried to go for his back takes. It just seemed like he was losing position. He was becoming too aggressive on the feet, and Kenny was just able to routinely get in a better spot. And the question is, too, you look at Simón, he's a very big, thick guy. He's very powerfully built. He's strong, and he comes from a good wrestling background. Is that going to be problematic for Borg to try and muscle him around and outwork him? Because, Ricky Simón carries a pretty solid pace. He's almost like a new age Clay Guida, if you will. There's also questions about Borg making weight. This is not the ideal scenario for any fighter, as we talked about in the open. Steven's the only one to miss weight for 249. So there's a chance Borg could miss weight for this as well. That could be a problem if he drains himself. There's also the concern that he doesn't drain himself. Simón does, and Borg comes in very fresh, weighing in at 138, takes the hit, gets the fight. Simón should be able to either avoid takedowns or at the very least scramble his way out to some better spots, especially if Borg gets over aggressive. And that's going to nullify Borg's biggest advantage, his biggest key weapon. On the feet, Simón couldn't hang with Rob Font's technical striking and long jab. He should have the edge here, both in power, activity, actually, and if you figure in the reach, that's huge as well, because we know Borg's going to want to come in and close that distance, but if Simone can stay active, he can pop away at him. Simone, I think, is going to do a little bit more on the mat, both defensively and offensively. He's going to capitalize on Borg's willingness to get aggressive. He's going to be a bigger man. He's going to get some top position that Borg gives up, unfortunately, and Simone's going to have success on the feet. He might only need to land 35, 40 significant strikes, but I think that's going to be key here. And my prediction is Ricky Simone to defeat Ray Borg by decision. At the midway mark of the main card, you get an idea of just how good this event is. It's not getting the notoriety and the talk that, of course, the UFC 249 stacked pay-per-view is, but if you look at it, you have to be impressed with how close these fights are and how well paired together these individuals are. We're in the UFC's lightweight division up next for Alexander Hernandez, 11-2-0, taking on the 22-9 Drew Dober. Dober currently a slight betting favorite. At minus 125, Alexander Hernandez plus 100. So a very close fight that very well could be even or even flipped by the time we get to Wednesday night. Now, Hernandez is coming off a win over Francisco Trinaldo. He got that win in San Antonio, I believe it was, where he trains out of. A lot of people felt Trinaldo should have won that matchup, and I have to agree with them, even though I had Hernandez to win. It was his first win after his first UFC loss, first loss in a long time. Overall, he's 3-1 inside the octagon. For Dober, he has won 2 in a row, 5 of 6, and 7 of 9. And one of those, that loss that's prevented him having a 6-fight winning streak, was a fight against Beneil Dariush, a very well-respected, very talented opponent that Dober was winning until he got caught with a submission. And again, Dober has really looked good of late, and we'll see if that translates here. Hernandez comes in 1 inch taller, 2 inch reach advantage, and he's the younger man by 4 years. So the physical stats on the side of Alexander here. Now, when you look at him overall, he's a fairly well-rounded fighter. He's got decent striking, good power, and fairly reliable wrestling. He can go offensive and defensive with it. But I think the overconfidence against Cerrone cost him, and Cerrone just smashed him. And you look at some of that matchmaking. You know, he upset Dariush in a short notice fight. He beat Aubin Mercier in a... he just nullified his grappling and took it to him, and then boom, Donald Cerrone, a well-established top-level fighter, just way too much too soon for him. For Hernandez, in his last matchup, he was a little bit too inactive against Trinaldo. Potentially gun-shy after getting stopped by Cerrone and Olivier Aubin-Mercier. My apologies, I said that wrong. But Hernandez a little bit gun-shy in his last matchup. I think possibly the impact of the Cerrone loss certainly got to him a little bit. Trinaldo, not nearly the lanky striker that Cerrone is. Still dangerous, still packs a punch, throws a nice little variance of offense, but still Hernandez didn't look like his same aggressive self. Could that change here? Possibly. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Now for Dober, he has a huge experience advantage. That's first worth noting. 32 pro fights to 13. He has, again, I would say close to the same amount of UFC fights that Hernandez has in overall fights. So that's massive. Dober has a very good kickboxing base. His power is improving. We've seen the power numbers start to ramp up here lately. Knocking out Nakra Kasparat in his last fight, very, very impressive. He's super durable, and he can wrestle when needed. That's an aspect he's added. He seems like one of these fighters, and I don't want to push him to too high of a level, but some of these guys who, when they add a secondary aspect to their offense that was lacking, for example, again, you look at Fabricio Verdum, when he added his improved Muay Thai and became a lethal striker and had his jiu-jitsu to fall back on, it just became so much more dangerous and just more capable, and won a title as a result. Dober is starting to round out his game just at the right time and catching a stride. That being said, I don't think he'll be able to find much of a wrestling advantage, if at any, against Hernandez. In fact, he will probably rely more on his defense, as Hernandez should look to try and take him down. But again, Dober's very good defensively, and that's a key factor here. With Dober, again, like I said, he's durable, but he's willing to throw hands and step in there. I love the way he's so calm, cool, and collected when the fists start flying. He's been in some absolute scraps with some opponents, and he stays technical. He's not throwing these big, wide, looping strikes. He's still throwing offense that's fairly channeled down the middle, and it's connecting, and it's efficient. And if you get a guy who's coming over around the outside with these wide, looping hooks, you're going to beat him to the punch more often than not, and that is a key aspect of it, especially if this fight devolves into a firefight. Again, he looked very good against Haqparast, who was coming in as a prospect with a lot of momentum, with power and skill. Haqparast looked a little flustered and was throwing a couple combinations that looked just a little bit rushed, but Dober capitalized and got him out of there in impressive time. Overall, I give Dober a sizable advantage in activity rate. And he just looks more comfortable in the cage. Now that some of the pressure was shifted to Hernandez, who got a ranking beside his name, he didn't seem like the same fighter against Cerrone, didn't seem like the same fighter against Trinaldo, and now he's facing Dober, who's just in a very good spot, feeling very confident, very, very sure of himself. Hernandez still trying to figure out exactly where he fits. It's interesting to note, though, that Dober has lost. His 2 recent fights were to Dariush and Aubin Mercier, both guys that Hernandez beat fairly soundly. So that's, MMA math at its finest there if we're going to go with Hernandez. But I like Dober in this matchup. Stay vertical, be the busier fighter, rely on his durability, and he's going to keep Hernandez on his back foot a little bit. Force him to be reactive and just be in there engaging and not opening himself up too much, but at the same time not allowing Hernandez to dictate the pace of the fight. This will be a very fun fight either way. Both guys are going to throw hands. I think just Dober edges him out with volume, impact, durability, and potentially even finishes him. Actually, Hernandez's durability is a bit of a question mark. And the way Dober's been taking guys out, I think he can do it again here. So my prediction is Drew Dober to defeat Alexander Hernandez by TKO. In our co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's heavyweight division as the 37-12 Ben Rothwell takes on the former light heavyweight and former light heavyweight interim title challenger Ovince St. Preux with a current record of 24-13. Now the current odds have Ovince St. Preux as the favorite despite moving up. He comes in at -160. Ben Rothwell, the turnaround, +130 as the underdog. Now, OSP moving up to light heavyweight. First time in his career as far as I can tell. He's coming off an upset win over light heavyweight Michael Oleksiejczuk. I haven't seen too much of whether OSP is this is a permanent move. This is just an interesting move for him. That's a big win for him. Oleksiejczuk getting a lot of credit and a lot of accolades as being a legit next contender, or at least a guy who's worth watching in the division. Had a lot of success. OSP kind of struggled in that fight before getting the finish. OSP had lost 3 of his last 4 fights prior to that including prior to that fight. Now, Rothwell is coming off a win over Stefan Struve. It was a very odd win, which we'll talk about momentarily. He had lost 3 in a row to Junior Dos Santos, Blagoy Ivanov, and Andrei Arlovski, in which, again, over a prolonged stretch of time with him being out with a suspension. Physically, Rothwell, 6'4", only 1 inch taller, which is surprising. OSP is a big dude. He will have OSP will have a 2-inch reach advantage. He's 2 years younger. Now, we don't know what OSP is going to weigh in at. I would anticipate Rothwell could be anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds heavier, as Rothwell usually tips the scales close to the limit at 265. I believe recently he weighed in at 266 even. Nonetheless, you would anticipate OSP is not going to go from 205 up to 260 or even 265. He'll probably be anywhere from 225 to 240, I think, is where he's going to max it. I would have him somewhere in the 230 range is the most likely scenario. So nonetheless, Rothwell should be the bigger man, at least from a weight perspective. Now, when you deal with that light heavyweight moving up to heavyweight scenario, there's a lot of questions. Number one, how does that extra weight or lack of a cut impact OSP? Now, OSP has some noted, and we've talked about it a lot, some cardio issues, some big cardio issues that have cost him throughout his career. That being said, he didn't look like he was physically struggling to make 205. He didn't look like he was really drawn out. So I don't know if that was contributing to it. It's just his physical makeup. Now, if he wasn't struggling to make 205, which was impacting his overall cardio, you have to wonder if the extra weight that he's going to put on is going to negatively impact him. Throwing kicks and carrying around that extra weight, as we saw Conor McGregor talked about it against Nate Diaz, is that going to be an issue here? In addition to that, is moving around a heavyweight like Ben Rothwell, a guy who's going to outweigh him against an opponent who traditionally is close in range, is that going to be an issue as well? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I would say I would actually think this is going to be a negative move for OSP overall. Now, the other question is, because he was the lighter man, will he have a significant speed and technical advantage? There is, of course, the idea that the light heavyweights are faster than heavyweights, which traditionally is the idea. Guys like Fedor and DC having a lot of success when they move, fighting bigger men. Are they more technically gifted because they have to be more technical fighting, in a lower weight class against guys who are quicker, more capable of doing more techniques and more ability, better cardio, just the whole 9 yards of just having better speed, better technical skills, better cardio. Does those edges lie with OSP? I'm not so sure. Rothwell's far from a fast fighter. He's very methodical, and that's a nice way of saying slow or flat-footed. And he's not that technical. OSP isn't super technical either. He's kind of a brute in his own right, but I do give him the speed edge. But that's not going to matter if he slows down, if he tires, which has traditionally been a problem for him. So how does OSP deal with the power and strength of a bigger man? It's a great question. Rothwell hits very hard. And I don't think OSP is going to be able to push him around and ragdoll him like he has been able to do some guys at light heavyweight. And I think that's going to be a problem. OSP has been hurt multiple times in fights. He's been knocked out just twice, but we've seen him hurt on multiple occasions. And Rothwell's very durable, and I think there's a big edge there. I think it takes a lot to get Ben Rothwell out of there, and I don't know if OSP can't get him out of there early. Will he slow down before Rothwell slows down, and will he slow down to a greater degree? It's also worth noting 4 of OSP's last 5 victories have come by submission. Rothwell has just 2 submission losses in his career. One of them came very early, one against Gabriel Gonzaga. And OSP, if he can't get to that avenue, get to that area, is that taking away one of his key elements? OSP, he's not a bad wrestler by any stretch of the imagination. He's not a world beater. He's not going to come in and double leg Ben Rothwell and take him down with relative ease. And if he does, and it doesn't, result in a finish or a prolonged period of top control, that actually might cost his cardio, that other issue. Rothwell's takedown defense, 70%, 69%, almost 70%. He was taken down a couple of times in the Gonzaga loss. Since then, he hasn't been taken down at all. And Rothwell doesn't look for offensive takedowns, so that's really going to limit the potential for OSP to counter or get scrambled to a position that's better, as he has in some fights against guys who want the fight to go to the ground. So that could be a big aspect of Ovince St. Preux's offense is no longer there. Now, Rothwell's coming off a fight where he didn't look great. In fact, he hasn't looked that great overall. He was behind because of in the fight, he landed multiple low blows, and then we had that weird interaction with the official convincing Stefan Struve to continue, and Struve continued, and he was compromised, and then Rothwell got him out of there. It did snap that 3-fight losing skid, which is a scenario I talk about. But if you look at OSP's body of work, he got decimated in the opening round against Oli Sejchuk and then came back and finished him. He lost to Krylov. He lost to Dominic Reyes. He was hurt in all sorts of trouble against Tyson Pedro and then got finished, got submitted by Latifi, and he was losing despite hurting Corey Anderson and eventually finishing him. He was arguably behind in the scorecards there. That's not a great series of performances. He basically has a couple of key moments that got him victories that keep him from being on a massive losing streak and probably not in the promotion. Overall, Rothwell is durable. He's more durable. He's going to hang around once OSP starts to slow down. Rothwell will slow down as well, but I think he carries his power more effectively. He's more likely to knock you out than OSP will. Rothwell is physically the bigger man. Bigger punches, and I don't think OSP is going to be able to deal with it well. OSP is going to slow down, carrying more weight, and the larger man he's having to move around. This won't help him as the fight advances, as it was already an issue at light heavyweight. I think it continues to be an issue here. Rothwell's durability will allow him to hang out and keep this fight in an area that OSP really can't exploit things, and I think Rothwell eventually lands something significant, and my prediction is Ben Rothwell to defeat Ovince St. Preux by TKO. We move now to the main event of the evening. We're in the UFC's light heavyweight division as a pair of former title challengers square off. The 30-7 Glover Teixeira taking on the 33-14-0 Anthony Lionheart Smith. Currently, Smith is the betting favorite, with a current line of -163 to Glover Teixeira's +137. Now, this fight was originally scheduled to take place on April 25th in Nebraska, so it's been bumped here, as most of the fights on these cards were scheduled to take place somewhere else. Now, Smith had a hand injury that he's been dealing with. He's been out for a while. It's been a bit of a concern. Certainly, maybe threatened his career a little bit. We'll have to see how he performs with all that under consideration. Now, Smith is coming off an upset win over Alexander Gustafsson. Now, that was almost a year ago. He defied the post-title fight letdown scenario after a pretty dismal performance against John Jones. Prior to that, he had finished Volkan Ozdemir, Shogun Hua, and Rashad Evans, and then finishing Gus, very impressive run for a guy coming up from middleweight who was kind of an afterthought, and if anything, was cut from the UFC during his first run after one fight and one loss. Now, for Glover, he has won 3 in a row and done so in pretty impressive fashion, 4 or 5 overall. He's got wins over Nikita Krylov, Ion Kuntalaba, the aforementioned Karl Roberson, and Misha Serkinov, all young, talented guys who, for one reason or another, are certainly in a better spot in their career, at least physically, and Glover took care of them in relatively impressive fashion. Now, Smith, younger guy as well, 9 years younger than Glover, same reach, but Smith is 2 inches taller than the Brazilian. Now, both guys have some very interesting trends when you look at their fights. Both are known for getting off to slow starts and rallying. Now, a little bit different, though. Glover has shown himself able to get hurt early in fights, survive, and often rallies on the strength of his grappling. Takes the fight back over as a superior grappler and wins as a result. For Lionheart Smith, he plays almost a rope-a-dope style. He tends to survive the early onslaught, hang in there, not necessarily winning rounds, not getting blown out of the barn, but just not looking that amazing, or at least doing that much. Waits for his opponent to tire and then completely takes him over, and more often than not is able to finish them. Against Johnny Jones, it didn't happen. His opening didn't come. He lost the fight as a result. But against Volkan Ozdemir, Ozdemir fell apart in round 3, got him out of there. Gus fell apart in round 4, got him out of there. Andrew Sanchez, Hector Lombard fell apart in round 3, got him out of there. Just impressive rally, come from behind victories for Smith. Now, Glover, in his last fight, he fought Krylov, who's a fighter I really like, and that was a close fight, back-to-back matchup, and that was one of those matchups where it could have gone either way. It was a split decision. Glover rarely loses fights late. If he gets deeper into matchups, he tends to have success. Not always the case. I know some people are screaming at me about a couple fights. For example, he lost the majority fight against Corey Anderson, and he was outclassed by Gus, but he got destroyed by Rumble early. What I'm trying to say is he's not one of these guys he's either going to lose start to finish, or he's going to win start to finish. Doesn't seem to be one of these guys who's going to get off to a really good start, be the better fighter, and then lose as a result. Against Gus, he was getting beaten up in the majority of the exchanges and got finished. Against Corey Anderson, he was just getting outworked. So you see what I'm saying when I say he doesn't lose fights late. It's not like he's going to give up a fight late in the matchup that he was arguably winning or had a potential to win it. So that Krylov was an interesting deviation from the norm. Now, he either his struggles come, like I said, for the duration of the fight, or again, he gets hurt and rallies for a victory, or he just dominates one, start to finish. You look at Kuntalaba rocked him. Had some early success. Roberson almost knocked him out before Glover rallied. And even Misha Serkinov had some control and some success early in that fight before Glover got to a almost indefensible position on a back mount, I believe it was, and got the finish. Smith has shown he has power. And against vulnerable opponents like Shogun Hua and Rashad Evans early in that fight, he has power, and he could replicate those issues against Glover, especially with a little bit of reach or length. He's a longer fighter. He could certainly put some damage on him, especially if Smith can get in, land those elbows in close and put some pressure on him. But Glover's such a good pocket puncher, and that's something you have to be very aware of, that Glover can counter and hurt you at any point in time. Now, Smith's a very good grappler, and we have to wonder at this point, is that avenue for Glover there? Can Glover take him down, expose him on the mat, and take advantage of it? I'm not sure he can. That being said, Smith has had 4 losses by submission. He lost to Roger Gracie, he lost to Antonio Braganetto, and Cesar Fajeda dominated him on the mat with takedowns en route to a decision. So there have been instances where Smith can be beaten on the ground, but he's improving. He's very good on the mat in his own right. And it's also worth noting Smith's far from a rock when it comes to his durability. He's vulnerable to the body. Alexander Gustafsson hurt him to the body. Thiago Santos hurt him to the body and ultimately finished him. And he's been knocked out 8 times over his career. A lot of them coming earlier in his career. He's got a lot of finish loss. He's got a ton of experience. And Glover, as we said, Glover has power. While he's primarily a boxer, he can still finish. He throws the odd kick very rarely. But nonetheless, Glover could put you out, could put Smith out if he puts hands on him early. Glover, when you look at his record, he's 3-4 in fights that go 3+ rounds. Not a great record for a good fighter. The split decision versus Krylov it really could have gone either way. It was a close fight. He had a top control decision against Cannonier where he kind of got buzzed early and then just held on for dear life and ground him out on the ground, took advantage of his grappling, and a submission against OSP. So you look at those last 2 fights. He had a split decision and a very close fight. The other 2 fights, he just decimated guys who was able to capitalize on the mat. So that 3-4 track record, there's some hole in longer fights. There's certainly some holes to punch in it. When he gets into rounds 4 and 5, knocked out by Gus, decision loss versus Jones, 2 of the best guys in the division, but certainly starts to wonder, is he vulnerable later in matchups? Does he have that area that Smith can exploit? Again, he struggled with Krylov, who isn't known for going deep. Krylov has a next to, I would say you can count on one hand. You might even only a couple fingers to count the number of times Nikita Krylov has gone the distance. I don't want to say it's just the once, because I'm having trouble drawing a blank on recent performances. But nonetheless, Krylov's not a guy known for going deep, and it was a back-and-forth war. So is that showing, as much as you want to applaud Glover for that gutsy effort, is it actually showing some deficiencies in Glover's game? Because Glover's getting up there. He's not a young guy. Now, Glover is enough of a submission threat early that he certainly could capitalize and do something to Smith that gets him in some serious trouble. But he also can put himself in some bad spots. He did so against Krylov for submissions, especially as the fight advances. And if we get into late round 3, round 4 and 5, with Smith's ability to rally and really put it on you, if Glover goes for something on the mat and Smith counters and gets on top, he knows how to finish. He's shown he can finish. Can he tap him out? I don't know. Could he submit him, or could he pound him out? Possibly. Could he do enough to steal a decision? Quite possibly as well. If Glover can't get Smith out of there early, Smith is a survivor who likes to thrive in rounds 3 and 4, and we have to be mindful of that. Glover has decent wins and over a lot of opponents, but they follow a trend. Again, he has wins over guys that tend to fold due to poor grappling or poor cardio or both. And I'm not sure Smith fits into either one of those categories. Smith, I think, is going to wear on him. He's going to clinch up a little bit, land those elbows. Smith has to be so careful in rounds 1, 2, and even 3. But I think he can do enough. Get around in the books. See if he can get 2 rounds in the books. Smith could be in great shape. Get around in the books over the first 3, but look for a transition between range striking and clinch work, landing elbows, scrambling out of some positions, doing what Krylov did and getting on top at times when Glover gets a little bit sloppy. Glover's probably going to win a round or 2 in this fight if it goes that far. If it goes into rounds 4 or 5, he's probably going to have a round or 2 in the books, but it's going to be a close fight, and he's not going to be looking good in the later stages. I think Smith has too many avenues to victory here. He can score with a knockout early against a shaky chin that Glover Teixeira has shown at times. He can pick up a late submission or knockout from exhaustion or accumulation of damage, potentially the combination of 2. Or Smith can win a decision based on work rate, again, where he steals 1 round in the first 3 and then takes over in rounds 4 and 5 as Glover starts to slow down. Again, I'm not saying Smith has a world-beating cardio, but he's shown the ability, more so than Glover has, to be effective later in fights and to really show up. I think he does it here. I think this is a bad spot for Glover as his career. Again, he's done very well against younger fighters, but I think they're just waiting for an opportunity for another younger guy to come along and pick up a victory over him. And my prediction is Anthony Lionheart-Smith to defeat Glover Teixeira by TKO. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC on ESPN 9. And again, I believe these are ESPN fights, both 9 and 10, the one that'll come on Saturday, a week from UFC 249. All of my preliminary picks will be made available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. As of recording this, UFC 249 has not occurred yet, so I can't give you my updated stats. I have been having a lot of success with my bet packs of late. Hopefully, you'll see that I've done well again, and we'll keep things rolling. Just $15. Again, if you are having success using someone else's information, there's a lot of good cappers out. There's a lot of good predictors out there. If you've had success there, keep following, keep doing what you got to do to win. If you're doing your own research on success, keep doing it. If you feel like you need a little bit of help breaking out of a funk or looking at fights from a different perspective, certainly consider investing in me, but don't do it if you're looking for a guaranteed win. I can't promise you that. All I can promise you is I do work. I've been doing this for 10 plus years. It's got to be 10 years by now. And I'll give you an honest opinion on the fights. I never discredit anybody on either side. I'll do my best to give you as much information as I can, and hopefully we turn a profit. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you all. Stay safe. Hopefully your families are healthy and are going to get through this. Enjoy the fights. We have 3 fights in 8 days to really break through some of the boredom that we've been experiencing from a live action sports perspective. Very excited. Thanks guys for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Hi.